Thank you for the flattering introduction. Are the microphones in the way they should be? Just tell me now and we'll fix things. I feel like I always advocate for tagging people and getting data from people on devices they wear. And this is really testing me because I've been given 2 devices and I had to find places to wear them and I have to wear them right. So it's good for me to be on the other side. I usually give, because I don't know many of you, only a few, I usually give an elevator pitch. Does any one of you doesn't know what an elevator pitch is? I guess I'm assuming that you know what it is. So this is my elevator pitch, just to introduce in 1 minute what my research is about. So I'm interested in working on methods that make us build better systems for harvesting very precise behavioral and geographical data. And once we get this data, often the ability to collect very fine, spatially very fine and temporally very fine data means that you have to rethink your models for analysis because of the constraints and the things you see in the data and how much data there is at the spatial and temporal. So we built quite a bit of models, of geotemporal models for that. And then, of course, we are interested in feeding this data back into applications and into recommendation systems or even reasoning systems for various disciplines. So I like multidisciplinary research quite a bit, and I've done my fair share, including zoology, for example. We tagged badgers in an Oxford forest to understand their behavior. That was a lot of fun. So today, though, although I would be happy to talk more about my data analytics front, I intend to concentrate on mobile health. And please, let's make this a little bit interactive. I'll try to ask questions perhaps, and perhaps you can stop me and ask more questions. I don't know how the other speakers have done, but I know when I'm on your side, I usually get bored, and after 10 minutes I drift away. So let's see. So mobile health. I found some statistics a few months ago on the web. So it looks like it's people install apps that have some sort of ability to gather information from them, being it through questionnaires prompted through notifications or through sensors on the device. So there is a tendency for users to, the market is ripe for this to happen. And then I found this nice quote that, well, I think given 2016 is already passed, I think we can easily refute that user will trust health apps more than their doctors. Well, it's not quite happened, is it? I do not generally trust doctors fully, and I usually Google too much. There was an article yesterday saying that we Google too much about symptoms, and it's actually true, but health apps are not yet there. And they're not yet there because of many reasons. And I guess here, through my research, I'm trying to understand what could make these apps better, and generally it's on the systems front, it's on the privacy front, it's on the interaction with the other disciplines front. And so I'll give you a few examples of studies we've done which have raised questions, and I'll try to discuss the questions and see if any of you can take them up and make better models. So the pros of having applications that can be put on a device, and instead of perhaps you having to answer questions that a doctor poses, or you having to go to a specific session so that you can be checked, is of course scale. But scale in many dimensions. There is a scale of being able to check and monitor many more people, but there's also the scale of the granularity on the information that we start getting. The information is also very personal because of the link between the user and the device. we can make these models very specific to the user, and therefore the care and the health study can be very much personalized. And that's kind of unique. It's something that in the normal health profession we're also losing. In the past, my mother had a single doctor that was seeing her, a single GP. Of course, you go to a consultant, but then it's usually also the same consultant for a while. While we're going into models where you go to a GP practice and you see the first doctor that is available. This scales better. But then we lose on the personalization, we lose on the fact that the person knows you. And we can try to bring it back with technology. And I think it's a very important point. We're not doing it too well, are we? But there are, and those are not the only pros, but this is the first one and the biggest one that helped me to set the scene here. There are also lots of cons. There are many unknowns when you put out some software to monitor people. There are things that we don't know about the users we are monitoring. Although you can ask many questions, you will never have a full view of that particular user. Does he have any pre-existing conditions? Maybe you forget to ask these questions, and then you have data, lots of data about this user, but you don't know, you forgot to add a sensor, you forgot. So these things need to be tied up, and we need to think of processes that work better for this sort of collection. And of course, there is the big brother issues that comes every time there's a new technology introduced. We see it, but now we see it for every technology, and it's getting a bit of a problem. As and the data biases and the algorithmic biases, this is the moment for this thing. So. These issues are big, and until we find good solutions, I suspect that mobile health has many other applications of our sensing technologies. They won't really fly until the users are kind of convinced that there is something for them, or some sort of protection, some sort of things that can be done. And so I'll give you, through this talk, I'll give you a few examples of what we've done and how we've tried to tackle some of these issues. But I would like this to be an open discussion, as I said. So the first model and work that I would like to talk about is our work on monitoring mood, and we've done it for a few years through various techniques, and I'll talk about all these aspects now. So the traditional methods used to studying people with mood disorders is either regular contact with a doctor that is putting you in an artificial setting and make you perhaps watch videos or movies that can change your mood and asking how you react. So studying you while you're doing specific things in these artificial settings. Or something that scales a bit better, asking you through traditional questionnaire. So you be asked every time you see this doctor, or perhaps even sent a questionnaire or told to fill in a questionnaire a day. So the granularity here, the temporal granularity of this is quite bad, both because we know that if you do it just once per day, it's not granular enough. And also, if you're doing it once per day and trying to recollect what you've done in the last 24 hours, you are likely to forget the details. So all this is kind of a problem. There is one other aspect that was brought to our attention quite later in the project we started, and it's about the fact that for some of these mood disorders, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm just reporting what I've been told, asking you about your mood might put you in a worse mood even. So can we use this concept to make better technology, and can technology help in this, into perhaps collecting mood information without the user being involved? So the other thing I learned also is that many, at least I was told this, many of the psychology papers that we see on which we rely for theory on mood analysis, the studies are often based on certain cohorts of people that are often groups of undergraduates or very specific groups, and having large-scale studies with a large variety of participants has always been not very easy for our colleagues in those disciplines. So I thought we were the only one testing our technology on our own undergrads, but apparently it's a well-known practice throughout the academic world. But now we have these devices that, of course, are taken everywhere. This was a picture I've taken from, I think it was a university in somewhere in Asia. They posted this, and they've had to make lanes, in fact, for different people with different aims while they were going on the stairs. So if you want to walk there, if you want to run there, if you want to text, you have a special lane. And of course, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, especially in this audience. These devices, and not just the mobile phones, but any other device like a watch or anything else we as a community can come up with, has a number of sensors that can be used to monitor the user. And not only that, we have resources. We have resources, computational and in terms of communication, that can be also leveraged upon. There's also a kind of in the middle ability here that would allow to use both passive sensing, but also to promptly notify and interact with the user dynamically. So the medium here is that questionnaires can be put on these devices and pushed a few times a day to the user, so that the ability of the user to remember things more than once a day is kind of helped. The difficulty here for that is that when do you prompt the user? Now, a few papers, not necessarily mine, have started to appear that study, also with psychologists in fact, the user context to try to understand for specific kind of questionnaires what would be the best time for the user to be prompted. When is it a good time to interact with the user? There's not a single answer. This is dynamic in many ways. It depends on the context, it depends on the app, or the type of information you want, and it depends on the user. So it's a very difficult problem. So one of the apps we had put out for a while back, we expected, this is an interesting story. As a community, we were preparing this sort of software, having a few users to use it, and this is a success we didn't expect. We put out an app, and we expected to beg about 50 users to install it. And instead, the app somehow, because possibly the university press release was actually very good, it went, I wouldn't say viral, but we had many more users than we expected to install and use this app. So the app stayed out for about 3 years, and we had, at any point in time, I guess there were 3,000 active installations, and people were prompted to reply to self-reports. I'll tell you more about the app. So even of those which needed report from the users, we have 11,000 users that self-reported. And this is over 1 million accelerometer samples, and as I said, I'll explain. And the distribution of where the app was installed was quite well quite well spread. So the message here at the time, over those years, was that perhaps the world was ready for, this was a mental health app, but the world was ready for us to engage with them. We had people asking us, and I'll repeat this later, more than 10 people wrote personally to us asking how they could show the data to their consultant. So I was surprised that they could see the link between the data we generated with the help of the medical profession, and that's a loop that we still have to be able to link together. We've not been able to, not we, I'm saying we as a community, been able to create those links that could make the medical profession a completely different profession. So how was this particular app? Well, nothing special. At that stage, and I'll talk about another stage where we're using the microphone to do something similar, we were asking the user about their mood. This was a simple way, we came up with this together with psychology, to ask the user about their mood. And this was really a matrix where the user with their finger the interface was very, very usable for someone on a device with a pad that you could touch. Had 2 dimensions, a negative and a positive direction, and an intensity kind of direction. So if you are very happy and very excited, you'll be up there. And if you're sad and really not very doing things, you're down here. So they would get this questionnaire, and then they would also be asked other questions. These questions were really for us to correlate our passive sensing with the activity. So the questions that we would ask were, what have you been doing in the last 15 minutes? And as you can imagine, this was very important data for us to understand if our accelerometer was really collecting the right data. And of course, you have all this dirty data in a way, because you know, in the last 15 minutes might mean that the user doesn't quite remember exactly, or and then perhaps you've been doing 2 or 3 activities, so you can't just classify that completely as 15 minutes I was running, because it's difficult. Also, it's likely that the user was answering this question when he could answer this question, so probably not while he was running, but after he was running. More likely, right? So it was probably when you're answering this question, you're not on your bike, you're not running. So there are all these biases in the kind of label data that we have. And I'm kind of raising them. So one important gamification approach that really kind of worked for us was that, I'll show you which results we were giving the user, but we were collecting passive sensing. So we were trying to not only gather information about their mood, but also gather information about the sensors and the daily life that the phone would detect with them. So clearly accelerometer, location, but also microphone in terms of level of noise only. So are you in a noisy environment, or are you in a more quiet environment? And also the number of, at the time, so number of SMSs, number of calls received and sent. And you would be able to unlock results, and I'll show the results, for yourself only after 1 week of use, and after 1 more week you would unlock the second. So the first week, you'll be able, if you use the app for a week, you'll be able to see the time of day results, which correlate the mood with the time of day. I'll show you how. The location results the week after. So a user generally kept engaged at least for a month, because we had the first 4 or 5 sensors unlocked then, and they wanted to see these pictures. I note that this was on purpose, not giving the user much back, because I think we're still in a phase where if we give too much information back to them, then they might change their behavior, and we didn't want to see it. We wanted some pure data. This was an academic app, not an app to help them yet. So this is the kind of outputs that we were showing them with the data. And this is for the microphone. So you would see that, for example, in the last 7 days, you had reported mood in the affect grid So the color is the microphone. If it was a noisier environment, you would have red, and if it was a quieter environment, it would be green. This is, of course, we had a much larger scale of noise level in the microphone, but for displaying purposes, we decided to have only these two colors. So you would start having an idea and find your own correlations with what you saw, but it's really minimal. In the same way, we were telling them that depending on the time of day, and the time of day is different colors, so in this particular, because the day was divided into 4 regions, four slots. And again, the reported mood was reported, and you could do your own analysis. Oh, look, it looks like I'm happier in the morning, or just simple inferences like that. And it looks like the users like this quite a bit. We got some positive feedback. But this wasn't really the aim for us. This was just to keep them engaged. But it looks like it was important, this trickling results to them and keeping them engaged had a positive effect on the usage of the app. Mind you, this app was really for our own research. It wasn't really hoping to help them yet, because I think we need to study before being able to help them. And this is exactly what I said about this. So lots of data. Now what do we do? 3 years of data, quite dirty. We don't know, because of privacy reasons, we actually didn't keep any information. We have no way, that's the other thing, we have no way of reaching back to the users. We haven't kept those IDs, so now even getting them on another study, or we can't do that. So learn from that. Maybe that I would probably change. We've been too careful with data. Location wasn't collected that frequently because at the time it was actually quite draining the battery, and so we preferred to collect it quite rarely. Accelerometer microphone also was collected only for noise level and never really only small samples. And also microphone, as I'll tell you later, as you probably know in this community, is quite power hungry. So also if you have an app that needs to be out there and be used, that would be something you do. They also we asked them also to answer some questionnaires through the app, and the users who decided to answer this general user questionnaire are listed here. There's of course the questionnaire about the mood, which was sent more than once. So we're still working on this data. I'm reporting some of the findings. The data is very dirty. I'm reporting some of the findings on the accelerometer and some on the location. The accelerometer is really a quite dumb sensor, but the first analysis we've done proved that somehow there was a reasonable correlation with the questionnaires that we prompted the user. So have you been running in the last 15 minutes? Well, it seems that it correlates reasonably well. I suspect there's a lot more that you can do on this because as I said, I don't think the activity, the breakdown of the activities is much more fine-grained than 15 minutes. So. And this, I'll spend some time on this because it's a nice picture, and I think it leads to some interesting considerations on our activity and how we could go about studying them. So let's start with this colored heat map. This is only 150 users, and on here is the weekdays, and here is the weekend. This is your 24 hours. So the clusters you see, so the top row, second row, third row, are clustered based on amount of activity. So as you can see, the group that is more active here is waking up later in the weekend, but also very active in the weekend. The group here that is waking up a bit earlier and then still quite active. Then there is this group that doesn't seem to have much activity. One thing that you will find in the paper is that these groups, if you try to correlate it very well with the happiness reports, the mood reports. So that group up there was a group of reasonably happy users. Of course, this is a big measure. This are big, and I'm not talking about the 150. I'm talking about all of the users. So there is a lot of noise in here, but there was a signal showing us that. Remember, the accelerometer. Psychology literature is telling us that activity is good for health, that physical activity is good for health. The accelerometer is not just about physical activity. The level of activity of these users was reasonably small in general. Here we are talking about differences between a user that somehow, the way I like to say, has a life, so is carrying their phone in the bag and probably go to work, or using their phone to make phone calls, because while you keep it like that, it moves. So there is a social component as well as a physical component that is detected here. And we hope to go more in detail in analyzing this. But it's a bigger message, and it's something that the psychology community has not yet quite been able to tackle. We also use the reported health questionnaire and correlated with accelerometer. And it looks like even there is a sort of trend. If you reported good health, you were likely to have an aggregated mood measurement that was a bit higher than others. This will make you laugh. So this is the location they reported, not the location we detected. So whenever you reported location and the correlation with your tendency of reporting the mood on one of the directions of our grid, it looks like when you were at work, you weren't very happy. It's kind of very sad to see. Also, we looked at if the microphone noise was telling us something about the day of these users. And it's interesting to see that in the weekends, the curve is somehow slightly different. So the noise is an interesting signal about our daily life. And I don't think many have looked at this. In general, this has nothing to do with mood in this particular figure. These are just statistics, right? So even just the change of location would be able to indicate the peaks of the daily life of the user, and the weekend will look different. The calls, less calls, people sleep more. The incoming and missed call, which make up for the received call, is an interesting consideration. This is interesting. So on the bottom here, we have the sense location, and on the top, the reported location per hour. And what you can see is the power of passive sensing, of reporting when the user is not in a condition to report. The evidence here is the data that you get at night. Obvious data probably, because you're likely to be home, but that's one indication, a very quite obvious indication that passive sensing is giving you more data because it's not depending on really the user reporting. Now, one thing we're doing, of course, and it's very, very difficult, we find it very, very difficult, is to correlate the mood reports with some sort of data to, this is the holy grail. Can we, given how you behave, predict mood, or predict mood changes, or predict changes in some illnesses? This is really what this research would be about. And we keep going on about biomarkers, digital markers rather, but it's a difficult thing. So, here are some pictures of accuracy of prediction of mood report in weekends and weekdays. Interestingly enough, something we also learn, I don't know if you're interested in this, but when you have the accurate grid the fact that you're reporting it on a two-dimensional scale means that one of the direction is less understood by the user. So positive or negative mood, easy. Intensity, much more difficult to grasp, especially if you haven't talked to someone before installing the app. If you only look at the x-axis, for example, there's quite a bit of correlation between the mood and the reported activity. And we think this is, and we haven't, I give you this finding and I give you our interpretation. We think this is because in the weekend, you can decide what to do. So if you are in a bad mood, you do something that would be more suitable, or you stay in bed, you do less. And therefore, that results in more correlation. That's just an interpretation. We're also trying to see how the various senses break down and correlate with mood and how I report. And this is something really ongoing for weekdays. So, going back to, I told you at the beginning that asking people, we've been told that asking people about the mood makes them conscious is not a positive thing. Clearly, the holy grail of saying, well, I passively sense you, and eventually I will be able to predict your mood without you telling me, is the holy grail. But there are other ways. There are other possibilities for passively sensing, which are more immediately related to our mood. And one of them is our voice. So one of the studies we've done, in fact, paradoxically, this study was done in 2010, which was earlier than our mood report deployment. This is, again, an interesting story. In 2010, the world wasn't ready for microphone sensing. So we were trying to detect emotions through the voice of the microphone collected data on a person's device. So if I talk now, the microphone would listen to this voice and pattern match, do analysis, machine learning, and detect emotions. Clearly, when you start saying this, people look at you like, whoa, really, can this be done? I'm afraid now that you get my emotions through my voice, and also you're detecting my voice. So we had a lot of pushback at the time. So we thought, okay, for the moment, if we want to put out an application that, and also the microphone is actually an expensive sensor. At the time, we were still working with Symbian and Nokia phones. And so we decided to push out the application with the mood reports with the affect grid. And that was very successful. People liked it, but we had less reports. Now I think the world is ready to pick up this research on microphone usage and trying to use voice to recognize mood is a big interesting things. What are the self-reports? We were able to correlate quite well with the various emotions and all the results in the paper. I think I'll move on this one. So the thing I wanted really to get to is that the microphone has a number of issues. One of them is privacy, of course. Are you really sending all this information to the cloud for analysis? All the clips of the voice, and how long do these clips need to be? And who gets that information once it's processed? It's a big thing. We've tried to. I'll tell you a bit more about the research. It might not detect internal mood states. If I'm down, I might not talk much. So you would have to add some other information here, and maybe frequency or other features might be able to help on this one. We haven't done that. And the microphone is, I know some of you are working with video and camera, so microphone is expensive too, and it has energy consumptions, especially if you have to do continuous sensing. It could be quite expensive. So we've done a few works, and these are more systemy works, that have tried to use different processes on wearables and also on our mobile phones to improve the energy consumption of continuous sensing on the microphone. We have tried to use the coprocessor, the one that is on most of our phones and is currently just used for motion recognition. So it's dedicated for that. We tried to see if that could be used to improve the microphone usage and processing of emotions or sounds or speaker recognition. There are a few papers I cite, and I guess they are here, but also I guess, I think, are they getting the slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. So and we also used, we tried to use the GPU on devices. How many of you are using the GPU for your own purposes? Okay, one or two maybe. So the GPU is generally used on a device for mainly, I would say, gaming, and it's often not used these days. And as you would imagine, it's a very expensive and power-draining processor on this device. But if used appropriately, we have shown that it can give very good performance. In fact, it is better to use sometimes the GPU rather than sending data back to the cloud for analytics, which is exactly what we wanted to find. Because if I can do lots of computation locally on the device, I don't need to send all this data for analysis back. And that's really what I would like to see. So this is a picture, I'll explain it, of, I think this was a detection of, is that probably speaker recognition. I might be wrong on what the task exactly here is, but essentially, depending on the hours of talking of the day, the continuous sensing going on the phone will drain your battery. When studies have been done that generally we are in this, for normal use, we are in this region here. So this is the region that you really want to consider. The different colors are different use of the coprocessor, this motion coprocessor, which is low power, that is on many devices now, and the use of that and the CPU with and without some optimizations that we have developed. I won't talk about that there in the paper. And the CPU and with or without optimizations as well. What here on the y-axis is the lifetime of your device. And what you see is that the yellow line, essentially the approach that we try to use, allows you to have a good lifetime even when you're high in this. And then it degrades, but it degrades reasonably slowly. So the use of the coprocessor for this sort of continuous microphone sensing seems very viable, and we're still pursuing. What is interesting also is the results we got on the GPU. This is a keyword spotting application. What you see on the x-axis is you sending the data to the cloud for analysis. I'm going to destroy the device. At 1, 5, 10, 20 megabits. And using the GPU naively or using the GPU with some optimizations, again, described in the paper. So, this is really the speed with respect to sending to the cloud. This is kind of, yeah, I guess I would expect this, wouldn't you? I expect so. But interesting result, I find, is that the GPU, with some batching of the kind of data that you're sending to the GPU for analysis, is actually quite efficient. So, interestingly, you want to look at this line, which is hiding here, this one. This is the batch sizes of what you send to the GPU. You want to look at this line with respect to all the lines of sending to the cloud. So, I think the results here, you would say, oh, well, the lines are quite similar. Yes, the lines are quite similar. So why are we sending it out to the cloud, right? And there are business models that require it, but then it's really only about the business models. It's no more just about the fact that we need it. We can do computation locally. We can do this sort of analysis locally. And that, to me, is a very interesting. If you want to read the full details, I don't think, I won't go, I have another 5 minutes and then finish. So, closing the loop here is very important. It's about the fact that we start having data and we build nice applications to gather this data, but we need to bridge it back. We had people asking us to give the data back to them. Just so that I know, I started at 11, right?
Yeah, you have.
So, yeah, exactly. So I have a choice to make here, and I think I'll ask the audience. I can go on and talk about our application on how we then worked on giving behavior intervention back to applications. Or I have other slides about our study on using devices for face-to-face analysis of office analytics, so people move around in offices. So I think, to me, it makes no difference to talk one or the other for the next 5-10 minutes. Do you have a preference? So who wants the smoke cessation discussion now? And who wants the face-to-face office analytics part? I think these are more, slightly more. So I will now move very quickly on this. I'll go back to that. So office analytics. Device, I spoke about mobile phones until now because we carry our devices around considerably. However, when we are in the office, I don't know about you, but when I'm in the office, I never carry my device. I usually leave it on the desk, and it's not coming with me in my meetings. It's not, unless it's sitting there on my table while I have the meeting. So it's quite accepted that it's difficult to track users in an office and their use of space, their use of interactions with our mobile devices. So there is scope to consider alternative devices. We built a Bluetooth-based one here. There is, of course, the ability to use watches, smartwatches, although people are not yet there. They're not wearing them, really. We've done a few studies with open beacon technology, which is essentially RFID. And at the moment, we're working on a device that is able to use, again, infrared lights, but detecting the angle of interaction. So what's your angle with respect to the other person in terms of face-to-face interaction? So one of the first studies we did was with a company moving from one building to another. So this was a research organization in Cambridge. If you know this organization, of course, if you know this building, you know the organization. Was living in that building there and then moved to this building here. And the research groups were the same but in different settings. The aim there was to understand if something changed in the face-to-face interaction by changing the building and how they were using this building. So we used technology that was already existing. It wasn't something we developed, and it's open beacon tags. They are low power, periodic recognition of beacons, and there were a base station that were logging the connection. So you could detect the interaction, you could also report the encounter, and you'd add location beacons so we would know where these people were. So we tagged about 3 research groups, 40 individuals, and about 59 location tags, and then 84 in the second study. We waited 5 months before doing the second study so that people could get used to the new environment. And it was only 2 weeks, I note. 2 weeks here and 2 weeks there. We had more encounters between people in the second building. We could just simply be because the building was more getting them together. So from this, you don't really gather much. We also had, so in social network, there is a measure of cohesiveness of community, which is called modularity. Modularity really tells you how internally connected a group is with respect to the rest of the groups. So if you have a higher modularity, you have these nodes having face-to-face interaction more with people in the same research group than with the other research groups. So we had quite high modularity in the old building. So people were actually talking to people in their research groups and not much else. In the new building, the modularity was much lower. So something was happening there that was evident in the data that we couldn't find. Now I'll let you interpret this. This is a nice picture you can interpret. So I'll tell you what the axes are. On the X and Y axis, you have the same, which is the idea of the participants. On the, and the participants are ordered by research group. So, you know, these participants are in the first group, the second group, third group. The dots there, the squares, indicate the level of interactions, how much interactions there was between these two people. That's a matrix, right? So black means a lot of interaction, and gray means less interaction. This is the old building, this is the new building. What's the interpretation here?
And you think people were talking to all kind of people?
Yes, not just inside the research groups, right? So it's quite evident. And this was, okay, I'll tell you here. This was because it turned out that the new building had, in fact, a big cafeteria where people were somehow helped to come together. And this really made a difference. The people were, because of the tables and you were sitting with someone else, you had this opportunity to also interact. I'll use one more minute to talk about floors. We study floored interaction. So there, old building, group A and C were sitting at the same, on the same floor, and group B was at a different floor. Result, old building, lots of interaction between A and C, very little between B and C, some interaction between A and B. More, in fact, between A and B. Now, new building, groups were swapped, okay? So A and B had more interaction because now they were on the same floor. So serendipitous interaction has been considered a good thing in research. They've written articles about the fact that you meet someone at the printer and discuss something. It's a good thing. Maybe an idea comes out. They studied this thing. So having this is good. So these people were not working together, but they were on the same floor. They meet more. A and C kept working together. And therefore, their interaction level did not change because they were forced to work together. They were on the same projects, they were interested in working. Forced is a big word, but they were working together. But why would you have this? Well, you would have that because you have B and C. People from C had to go to the A floor to meet the A researchers. And as a consequence, they were meeting the C researchers as well, the B researchers as well. So it all kind of had an explanation, but it was interesting to see it in the data. And we like the fact that this data, okay, that doesn't work anymore. Let me see if I can get a keyboard. Okay, oh yeah, okay. I'm trying to go, sorry, I need to go back to find my slide, my final slide here. So these are studies we're doing, and we're doing a lot more with data. Now, in 1 minute telling you the way ahead here. Privacy is a big question. The way I would like to solve privacy is with the knowledge we have, which is the systems angle. I think assuming that all these applications, all this information needs to go to the cloud is silly. I think we can build, not only, we can enable the local computation through better systems and to better system use. App developers are not even trying because this is the model in which we taught them to develop apps and to develop systems. So it's cloud-based, and that's wrong. I think we can find business models and ways to compromise this. I'm aware of business model relying on data, but the question then is, what kind of data is needed to have a good business model? And I think it's a general debate that's very interesting. Sensors have biases. Even just sensors from the same type of phone have different biases, and they need calibration. So we're studying models to make even just an accelerometer of this kind of devices is very unreliable. So how do we expect doctors to trust commonly available devices for this kind of studies? We're trying to look at techniques to improve this. In terms of, we're doing a lot on voice and a microphone for health. Voice and sounds are good indicators of health and illnesses and progression of illnesses, so we're looking into that. I'm working with Alzheimer neuroscientists because it looks like navigation is an important part of the progression of the disease, so being able to track that is indicative of how the disease progresses. And if we can diagnose that, then we'll be able to cure earlier. We have a project on medical adherence. I can never pronounce that word, which means people need to take their drugs. We need to remind them. We need to contextualize this information and try to improve the way in which we tell people that they need to take their drugs. I think that's roughly in this area what it is. I do a lot of more data analytics as well, which I'm not talking about. But everything's on my webpage. That's my Twitter account and my email in case you need it. Any questions?
Thank you, Cecilia.